Hi, this is Corey Yarborough, Executive Director of the Hispanic Black Gay Coalition, here for another installment of our Mayoral video series. Today, we're back in Titus Park to interview candidate Charlotte Golar Richie. Charlotte Golar Richie is a former state rep and is currently the Vice President of Youth Build USA. Today, I'm here to talk about education, the criminal justice system, gender equity, and other issues that are central to our campaign for Mayor of Boston. Charlotte, thank you so much for sitting down to do this interview with me.
A pleasure, Corey.
So I just want to start by asking you why. And by why I mean when you received an invitation to be interviewed by the Hispanic Black Gay Coalition, why did you decide to accept the invitation? Why is our community so important to your campaign?
Oh, I would never dream of not accepting the invitation. And of course the community is important. It's important not just to my campaign, it's important to the city. I mean, it's part of our community. I feel that the campaign is an indication to potential supporters and supporters about the kind of mayor I'm going to be. And I'm going to be one who is absolutely going to be about inclusiveness and diversity, and that means the LGBTQ community.
Mm-hmm. Great. And when you talk about inclusiveness and diversity, I actually want to read a quote that comes from, I guess, your greeting letter on your website that really stood out to me. It says, "I know what it will take to run for this city, but more than this, I know what it will take to unite this city." I think that's a great quote. Tell me a little bit about what it will take to unite the city, and especially when we look at our constituents who are LGBT people of color, Black and Latino LGBT people. What do you think it will take to unite them with the community?
The idea of uniting this city is something that I've thought about for a while. Mm-hmm. I think Boston has made giant steps in the way it, I think, treats, accepts, welcomes people into the city. Mm-hmm. We've seen the change, certainly I've seen it over the last 20 years that I've been involved in politics and government. However, we haven't always rallied to the defense, really rallied in an active way to the defense of everyone who may be struggling. We're here to talk about the LGBTQ community, but it's not just that community. It's also families that may be struggling, young people who may be facing homelessness. It can be neighborhoods that are racked by crime and violence. And so in talking about unity, I was looking at all of those things. When we talk about our school-age kids and the kind of education they're going to get in the city. But here today we're talking about Black and Latinos who happen to be gay, lesbian, transgender. And how do we rally to their defense when they are experiencing discrimination, when they're having difficulty getting housing? Why? Because of their sexual orientation. I think on paper, we're all going to say, of course, we can't support that. But in practice, who's going to stand up for them? And I want to be that mayor who's going to be there as a friend, but also as a champion. And I think I can do that. I know I can do it.
Great.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about what you have in mind in terms of policies or different approaches to meeting the needs of that community, because you say, we deal with things like discrimination, health disparities, homelessness. So just give me an example about solutions for our community in those areas.
So we could start, let's say, if we, just not in any particular order, but let's say we took the issue of public safety. Let's say we took the issue of hate crimes. There are already laws on the books that speak to that issue, right? Now we want to make sure that the laws are upheld. We want to make sure that we work closely with law enforcement to hear what they're seeing out there regarding the issue, what challenges they may have to addressing this issue, that proper training is in place so that the people that we rely on are able to identify it and then ensure that there's swift and sure justice when it comes to this issue. If we took an issue around health disparities, the issue around HIV and AIDS, we know that this is still a very big concern from a national perspective, but particularly for the Black and Latino community. These communities are affected disproportionately when it comes to HIV and AIDS. And then you drill down further and you see that the LGBT community represent in those communities, within those demographics,
Yeah.
blacks and Latinos, are affected to a great degree. And what are we doing there, right? So I would think, and this is something I know you're concerned about, is being able to track progress, to be able to figure out where are we seeing improvements made and where do we need to invest to make sure that there's targeting of those populations and that those demographics have the resources to be able to prevent AIDS and HIV and AIDS from happening in the first place, and that folks get the treatment. When it comes to healthcare, for example, Corey, I feel that with HIV and AIDS, it should be just like diabetes, where there's screening. We take away the stigmatization that is associated with that disease, and that people get the treatment that they need.
Great, great. So how as mayor will you kind of navigate some of these dilemmas? Because I think one of the reasons why HIV rates are so high in Black and Latino LGBT communities is because, you know, resources aren't placed in those communities, and funding is being cut for HIV prevention because overall Massachusetts has decreased our infections. So how will you be our advocate to say that, you know, despite what the mainstream community or what the white community may be experiencing, money still needs to be invested in particular communities in particular areas?
Maybe a couple of things. One is I'm going to work with you.
Okay.
You know, and you've been at this for 4 years, at least. So I think that you need to join with grassroots organizations, advocacy groups. You need to join with people who are in the know, who understand what the issues are. And just because I'm going to be mayor doesn't mean I have all the answers. But then what we have at our disposal at the city is we have this wonderful public health commission, which has a track record of promoting progressive policies to support communities, many of which have felt and have experienced the disenfranchisement and alienation and things like that. So I think I would continue in that vein to make sure that we have a robust public health policy in the city, that we have joined with our community health centers and with advocacy organizations like yours to make sure that we are doing the right thing by communities like Black and Latino LGBT communities here in the city of Boston.
Great. Let's shift gears and talk about education. Both national and city statistics talk about the disparities that Black and Latino LGBT youth face in schools, from skipping schools to dropping out of schools to suicide rates to bullying, you name it, is disproportionately affecting our communities. And I see on your website you are for solutions for overcoming social and economic barriers. So tell me a little bit about how you will apply those solutions to LGBT communities.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do when I am elected mayor, should I be fortunate to become elected, is to establish an office of youth affairs or youth leadership. It'll be an office that is going to work with young people at the cabinet level around education, employment, leadership, and advocacy. I think, you know, we've seen previous attempts to engage our young people, but usually it's from kind of a top-bottom approach. This is where I would like to bring young people right to the top to help us create an agenda for young people in the city, and then to help to drive that agenda. So that's something I'm committed to doing. Okay. Then part of that is going to absolutely be to spend some attention on the LGBT community, and working with you in your office will make sure that we give special attention where needed to the Black and Latino LGBT community, to address issues like homelessness, issues like bullying, issues like family reunification, things like that.
Great, great. And you know, when we talk about all of those different things that are affecting our youth, one thing that often gets neglected is sexual violence. And this is a topic that one of our supporters specifically asked us to ask the candidates. So how will you work in schools to resolve sexual violence, sexual harassment that may start in the school and also spill into the streets? So what is your solution to that? And
that's not just the LGBT community that's affected by that, right? That's going to be all young people, and it's going to be, and I think the way we're going to tackle that is to really promote at least a curriculum that promotes peace, that promotes efforts around conflict negotiation, ways for young people to understand how they should treat one another. It's going to be very much about educating our young people about what's right and what's wrong. And bullying, treating people based on their prejudices, their biases about how they feel people should be, to treat them in a bad way, to get physical, to shout out taunts, to that kind of thing. All of that should not be accepted at all. And I would want to work with our new school superintendent, who I will bring on as quickly as possible, to really promote a culture of inclusiveness, again, just like we want to do at City Hall.
Great, thank you. So you've received the endorsement and support of many women's organizations and PACs, to name a couple: the Massachusetts Women Political Caucus and Emily's List.
Yep, and the Women's Campaign Fund, which I just received their endorsement recently. Thank you.
Great. So I'm curious to learn a little bit more about, once in office, how you will honor these endorsements, and what do you see as the critical issues facing women of color in Boston?
So I think as mayor, these organizations and others that I hope will endorse me during the course of this campaign are going to want me to be a strong leader, not just for social justice issues, that's going to be important, but a strong leader and a strong manager in terms of the financial health of the city. You're going to want me to be able to manage the resources and to manage the personnel. It's a big, big city that we have, Corey. $2.6 billion budget, 45 departments, and probably something like 17,000 full-time employees all across the city of Boston. So that has to be a focus of my work. And I think the reason I was able to get the support of these organizations was because, yes, I'm a woman, and they see me as being progressive and having had a strong record around social justice, but they also see me as being a strong manager. I'm the only candidate of all the candidates who's managed a city agency. I ran the Department of Neighborhood Development, was chief of housing, and my agency had about a $100 million budget and 200 employees. That's important. If I can do a good job there, then I can do all the other things that you would want me to do, right? To be able to bring in new programming and new investment in communities that have been struggling, that need the support. And the community that you're advocating for is one of many, right? So you want me to bring quality to the schools, to improve the quality in our schools where we've seen disparities. That's something I'm going to absolutely want to focus on. I want to address the gun violence in neighborhoods that have historically been racked by this gun violence. I want to deal with that once and for all. If we can make our neighborhoods, if we can make our city stronger, more peaceful places, that benefits everybody, including Black and Latinos and the LGBT community.
Great. And just to go back and just emphasize my question, I guess, do you see all of those issues that you just talked about connected to women's issues and the women's experience? Because we talk a lot about diversity in terms of race and sexuality, but rarely in terms of gender. So I've been asking, a lot of the candidates, do they feel there's unique needs for advancing women in Boston that we need to address, or do you think they're interrelated to all those issues you just talked about?
I think that they're interrelated, but I do think that the women in the city of Boston will be able to count on me to stand up for them, whether it's the issue that we've been grappling with most recently around violence against women. I'm going to be there to stand up for those issues, whether it's around fairness around employment. Pay equity is something that I'm going to ask my administration to look at, right? So there are any number of things, but I know that when should I become mayor, Corey, that I think, and I see it already in the campaign, that girls and young women and older women are coming up and saying, things like, we're so proud that at least we have one woman who's running for mayor, and how much more proud we'll be if you are elected.
Great. So let's shift gears again and talk about the criminal justice system. And this is something that HBGC and collaboration with a lot of other organizations have dedicated a lot of time to this year. And so just to read off a statistic, Black and Latino people make up 18% of the Massachusetts population and 53% of the incarcerated population. So as mayor, and I know as Mayor of Boston, you can't be responsible for the whole state of Massachusetts, but as Mayor of Boston, what will you do to help address this racial disparity within our criminal justice system?
So I see myself working very closely with the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office and the Massachusetts Department of Corrections and with others in law enforcement around this. Again, prevention has to be where we start. Let's start with our young people. We have this Office of Youth Affairs that I mentioned, which will be a place where we're going to be able to bring in young people to help with this agenda. Maybe about 3 weeks ago, convened a meeting at Roxbury YMCA with young people all across the city of Boston to talk about what kind of mayor do they want, what kind of city do they want. And in the discussion during this conversation that we had, a big issue came up around the need to strengthen ties with police. We could start there. Just about every day I talk to a police officer because I want to be able to I want them to see me as an ally. I want to really promote a stronger, better relationship between our young people, particularly young people of color, and police. I want our police to live in the communities where we are finding that most of the arrests occur. I want them to get to really know our young people on a personal level. Then there's, our schools, our young people getting from their educational experience what they need to go on to become college ready and career ready, or are they feeling that the culture is such that they feel they have no place in our schools and so they end up dropping out. And then when they drop out, what do they end up doing? I mean, who are their role models? Where's their support system? Those are the kinds of things that I'm going to get really drilled down and get involved in, because if we don't deal with it on the front end, we're going to deal with it in the back end. Then I understand that some young people may not want to go on to college. They're going to maybe want to be involved in benefit. They could benefit from vocational education. That means that we need to have a state-of-the-art voc ed school. And I want to work with Madison Park to see that it is that state-of-the-art educational institution here in the city of Boston. And I know that we can do that. And then finally, we know that something like 300 people exit our jails and prisons like every day. What are we going to do about those folks who are coming out of jails and prisons? We need to put in place safeguards so that they're going to be able to get housing, they're going to be able to get employment so that they don't recidivate. Okay, so that's going to be a big issue. And I'm going to want a strong reentry plan for people coming out of jail and coming out of prison, and so that they can go on to lead productive lives.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about really increasing relationships between community members and police officers, because I think that's very interesting, and I actually watched that video with the youth from the Roxbury YMCA, and I think what may be really challenging about doing that is working with a community who are often the victims of police brutality, racial profiling, and kind of mending that relationship, given that they're already viewing police officers as skeptical, or they're already viewing police officers as targeting them. In many cases, that is true, or it can be the case. So how will you, what's going to be your approach to that, to build better relationships between the two?
So I think that you have to get in there and get to know both parties. So this is not about pointing fingers. I live in a community that would be seen as the Black community, or at least the majority of the residents there would be people of color. Not entirely, it's actually a very diverse community, but certainly the majority of people in the neighborhood where I'm right off Bowdoin Street, which has been seen by law enforcement from time to time as a hot spot, and was also reported on and described by some members of the press as 68 blocks where a lot of the actions taking place in the city of Boston. I think that I'm going to be able to bring the parties together, promote working with law enforcement, for example, more training, bring in more investment, bring in the business community, engage our institutions of higher education, Roxbury Community College, Bunker Hill. I mean, there are going to be a lot of parties, neighborhood grassroots organizations, and so on, right? But I want to say, Corey, that because I live in that community, I know that we go back and forth in terms of wanting more police and having more police presence, to wanting to target the high impact players, recognizing that not everyone in the community, that the majority of the people in the community are law abiding residents who who go to work, who have businesses, who are raising their families, caring about their kids and all of that, right? Okay, but so we want more police, but we want police who are going to do right by us, who respect us, who feel that they're a partner with us, right, in the community. And then for the young people, I feel that they want to be respected. They want people to listen to them. They want those who are a little older, the adults, so-called adults, to listen to them and welcome them into the decision-making process. It's complicated, but I think it's something that we can work with, and we can achieve a positive outcome in the end.
You know, as mayor, your goal is to unite different identities, different communities, and I want to know a little bit more about how you're going to do this in the Black community, particularly Black leaders who are anti-gay or perceived to be anti-gay. And to give you an explicit example, I noticed that Reverend Eugene Rivers, who's a part of the 10-Point Coalition, is a huge supporter of yours. So when you have someone like Reverend Eugene Rivers, who is known for being anti-gay, was behind the anti-marriage movement here in Massachusetts, supporting you, as well as some LGBT people supporting you, once in office, how will you bring those two people together to create meaningful change?
Okay, so that's a good question in terms of how do you bring people to the table. I think that there are different ways you can do it. I don't know that initially I have to force people to the table. I think in some ways I become the thing that these groups have in common. The fact that they're supporting me. I mean, Reverend Rivers supports me, but so does Reverend Annie Russo. You know, Jamaica Plain, who's helping me we just opened a Jamaica Plain office. I mean, I think that what you get with Charlotte Golar Richie is someone who has 20 years of experience working in community, politics and government, working with so many different people, and they kind of know where I'm coming from. So there's no question about whether Charlotte's going to support the gay and lesbian community. The question for Reverend Rivers, for example, is, am I going to promote opportunities, economic opportunities? That's his big issue for people in the community that he serves. Am I going to be there for young people, particularly those who have felt that they're sidelined, that there's no way for them to get involved in government and things like that? I mean, he has an agenda that is one that I feel that I can work with him to address, that does not do harm to the agenda that Corey Yarborough would have. You know, and I think that's how we all end up working together. Where's the common denominator? Where's the common ground that we can work on together? And there may be times that, you know, you're going that way and he's going that way, and we're not going to be working on the same thing. I don't know that we have to all the time, but there's so much we can work on together, and there's so much that we have to do and to get done in the city. And I believe that I'm going to be that. I think I can be the person that can unite us around the things we can work on together, and that I can still work with you on the agenda that you have, and still have the respect of someone who might not be there pushing hard on that agenda, but respects the fact that that's our agenda and we got to get the work done.
Okay, great, thank you. So just to conclude, just some quick answers to these questions, so just 3 or 4 words, kind of fill in the blank type of statements, okay?
Yeah.
The first one is, a more equal and just Boston requires
courage, leadership, compassion, and a commitment to all people.
Okay, great. A personal hero of mine is?
Well, you know that I just lost my dad, so I'm going to say my dad for this particular interview. He happened to he served during his long career as Commissioner of Human Rights. And he was maybe one of the first people that I talked to about the LGBT community and the fact that we could not discriminate against people based on sexual orientation.
That's beautiful. Sorry for your loss as well. It's beautiful. And the next one is, as a leader, I am looking to improve in the area of?
Sharpening my message so that everyone is clear on where I stand and understand that I am going to be that courageous leader that they're looking forward to having as the next mayor.
Okay, great. And lastly, to the Black and Latino LGBT community, I pledge.
Oh, I pledge to always be your advocate, to be your partner, and to champion the cause of fairness and equality throughout my tenure as mayor.
Great, great, thank you. So is there any final words you want to say to our viewers, or tell us a little bit about how we can get into your campaign?
I would say to your viewers that it is a privilege to be able to speak with you today, to appear on this program, and to let you know that I am a candidate for mayor here in the city of Boston, that I've been involved in politics and government for a very long time as state representative for the 5th Suffolk District of Dorchester and Roxbury, as chair of the legislature's Joint Committee on Housing and Urban Development, as chief of housing and director of the Department of Neighborhood Development, and as an aide to Governor Deval Patrick, and most recently as a senior vice president for Youth Build USA, which works with young people who've dropped out of high school, reconnects them with job and education. I've served my country as a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer living in Africa and teaching high school students English as a second language. I've worked in my community helping to get off the ground a nonprofit organization that connects residents with programs and services to improve their quality of life in the city. And so much more. I've raised my family here. I've lived in my community in Dorchester for 26 years and raised my family. My 2 daughters, and Winston and I have been hopefully good neighbors to the people in our community in Meeting House Hill. And I just ask for your consideration. I ask for your vote on September 24th. I ask that you go to my website to learn more about my campaign at charlotteformayor.com. Thank you so much.
Great, and thank you.
Thanks, Corey.
Appreciate it. Best of luck.
Thank you.